Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Pick Six podcast, and welcome back to our All 32 series. Katie Mox here with Will Brinson. This is the series where we catch up with insiders to give you all the need-to-know information on every single NFL team. Today, we're previewing the Cleveland Browns with 92.3 The Fan radio host and Fox 8 personality, Ken Carman. Ken, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
I was going to add, we were like, what do we do? What noun do we put for Ken's Fox 8? Did personality work? I was going to say Cleveland man of the people, antagonistic. I'm kidding. You should add a gif of you and I were going to battle and go to war on a radio show in the morning. And I think people were pleasantly disappointed at the cordial nature with which we discussed the Cleveland Browns, a team that apparently I hate. I wasn't aware that I hate the Browns. In all seriousness, I will ask you about that before we get into the actual personnel. Like, is this like Cleveland feels like the ultimate us against the world team? The Browns do ahead of 2023 for a variety of reasons.
Well, I think, guys, it's weird. I compared them to the Bills because it seems like it's a put up or shut up year in a lot of ways. But the problem is the Bills were 13-3 last year, and the Browns were 7-10.
Right.
So, I mean, we are in a very desperate situation, and I think there's a lot of people who are either on one side, they're very optimistic about it, and on the other side, because, I mean, Myles Garrett was number 1 overall, and he's consistently one of the best in the NFL, but he's never Defensive Player of the Year because they're not a playoff team most of the time. Everybody knows Nick Chubb is good, but then we're wondering about his future. And I think there's just so much up in the air that a lot of people are just kind of in prove-it mode. I brought this up before. I think that this offseason kind of reminds me of the one between 16 and 17 where they had came off the 1-15 season where it's kind of like, all right, we'll see what they can do, and that's about it. So I guess we will see what they can do. People are more excited about some other things right now.
Interesting.
Well, you mentioned a lot of names, but there's no one that needs to prove it more than Deshaun Watson. How does he look so far?
According to what we're told, so far so good. He and Elijah Moore have put together a nice rapport. There was a lot of stuff. I liked how honest he was. I think some fans have had problems being honest about how bad he was in 2022. I know he did his he did a podcast with his quarterback coach. And they were like, yeah, his quarterback coach said, you struggled? He's like, yeah, I struggled. And we've looked for reasons about that. You know, the Browns themselves have said that this offense is going to look different. I think it's going to be very pass-heavy to start off the season and certainly to start off games. And they're going to try to put the ball in his hands and make him as comfortable as possible. I don't know how much of last year's offense in those 6 games we're really going to see in this year's offense. Now, I brought up some kind of big brain conspiracy theories.
You told me this on the radio. I don't hate it, honestly.
I shared it with Will. Well, I brought up the weird thing about it is I've got texts from people who have kind of been like, yeah, you're not really wrong. Can't confirm you're right. I'm going, okay. Where I've kind of brought up going, this is a team that you know, Paul DeBodesta is in charge of things, and he's a team president, right? And he's always going to think big picture. You know, the whole Oakland A's, New York Mets thing, he's always going to think big picture, and he's doing that with the Browns. And so when Deshaun Watson takes over, they have a 1% chance to make the playoffs. And Kevin Stefanski, and Will, I told you this last year. Yep. You asked me about Kevin Stefanski's future. I go, he is in no danger of losing his job. And everybody around's going, he might get canned. He might get canned. I go, he is not going to lose his job. And I wonder if they looked at it, they go, they got a 1% chance of making the playoffs. If we make the playoffs, great. But we're not going to put anything on tape and let everybody get ready in a season that we're probably more than likely very well not going to make the playoffs in, and then really put ourselves in a bad position for next year. Now, that takes an obscene amount of trust in the NFL, unlike anything we haven't seen in my entire life. But it's something that I've kind of bandied about, and it's something that I've not got the type of pushback that I was hoping to get. So it's a good thing for the future, but also if they go out there and they're terrible, well, then there's no more excuses then.
The main reason that I don't think that you're crazy for having that conspiracy theory, and I love galaxy brain conspiracy theories. They're my favorite thing in the whole world. But like the Paul DePodesta stuff, I think is really interesting because that is something that a baseball executive would do if you put him in charge of a football team, is to say, okay, analytics show us like that 1% to make the playoffs is simply not happening. I don't care. You could throw us in the throw us in the hunt graphic all you want, CBS, NBC, and Fox, ESPN. It's like we don't think we're making the playoffs. 1% is 1%. And then additionally, if you look at, you think about baseball, right? When you play baseball and how much impact they have on the second time and third time around the order. When when hitters get to see someone multiple times, you can make an easy correlation with a defense seeing an offense for the second. Like if you can see all that stuff on film and not be surprised by it, it's easier to prepare. So that I can kind of get behind it only because I love conspiracy theories and Paul DePodesta is there. You mentioned the offense will look different. Kevin Stefanski, I don't believe Ken has been above 60% pass rate in his time there. In fact, it may have declined, but you have the quarterback situation, which is weird, somewhere between 54 and 57%. Do you think we see a 60 plus 40 minus split this year from the Browns?
Oh, I think we will. I really think we will. Now they got Nick Chubb. I think they're going to pass. This is kind of an old style thought, and I think you guys might be bored by this. I think they're obviously going to pass to run later in the game. I think they're going to be very heavy, and they're going to rely on Deshaun throwing the football and then letting him go out.
That's a new school thought.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. The league changes so quickly. Like, I feel like that was like, were we talking about that?
That was like 5 years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it is.
So I'm always just kind of wondering, like, I'm terrified of being stuck in the past on like some of the old tropes and things like that. But I think in a lot of ways, like they are going to be throw the ball, hopefully get it to a 2-possession game, get to about 4 minutes left to go in the third quarter, and then, all right, let's see if we can take it from either a 3-possession fourth to a 2-possession fourth and see if we can salt this away. And I think that's going to work against some teams, but they play in the AFC. And you play in a division where I don't know what Kenny Pickett's going to be. He's not nearly as bad as I thought he was going to be, but I thought he was well taken care of by his head coach. We'll see what happens with Matt Canada. And you got Joe Burrow, and I do think Lamar Jackson's going to be better with Todd Monken. I think that he's going to be much better with Todd Monken this year. So you're going to be in a very tough division, and then you're in a very tough conference where I think only 2 teams might be okay with finishing last in the division, and they happen to play in the same division. So these are going to be some shootout games. So they're going to put these games in his hands a lot, and I don't know if I still think that might be the plan. I just don't know if it's always going to work out that way. Sometimes it will. Against the Cardinals of the world, it should. But against a lot of these teams, these games are built to come down to the wire. So we'll see how it goes.
Deshaun's going to be throwing the ball a lot. You mentioned a lot of these games coming down to a shootout. You've got Amari Cooper. How many wide receiver studs, if you will, can this offense support? How is Elijah Moore looking right now?
Well, I was excited about the trade. The reason I was excited about the trade is that they didn't give up a ton, and I thought that he has a great amount of potential. I was immediately reminded going, hey, this is the team that traded for Aaron Rodgers. They're trying to go to a Super Bowl. Their general manager and their head coach are in a lot of ways in the same position as the Browns are, and they didn't want this guy, and he's young. And so that immediately, all right, I mean, if you got to go get a guy, there's a reason why he's available, and he's so young. So that comes with baggage.
Yeah.
But I try to tend to look more towards the positive. He had Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's a rookie. They were going to focus on Garrett Wilson. I think Amari's a veteran, and I think he's just a pro's pro in a lot of ways. I don't see any of the, for everything that OBJ is as a player and as a person, obviously he has the tendency to take the wind out of a room. And I don't see any of that with Amari.
Amari's quiet, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. And I think that Elijah will be able to stretch the field a little bit, maybe get open underneath. I've seen some of the crossing stuff that they've done, and they've done a little bit here. Now, I don't know if this is to get people talking, and I don't know if they'll ever actually do it. But we saw on OTAs a little bit that they lined up Elijah Moore in the backfield a little bit as a bit of a Yeah, to see if they can I wonder if it's to maybe get the ball in his hands in different setups, maybe just to throw people off. I don't know. It might be an exciting feature. And for all we know, I mean, Kevin Stefanski is very close to the best guy. He's that way in press conferences and that way in life. We may never see it during the regular season. We might see it play one against Cincinnati in week 1. So I wish I could tell you I have any idea, but I think they're obviously going to use Elijah Moore a lot. My problem is with Elijah, or my concern is, and we discussed this today on the morning show, I saw the Chris Trapasso article on CBS Sports about the players that the 8 players that are make or break for this year, right? And he kind of listed him as a potential bust guy. Like, we got to find out this year. He's been traded. He's going to play with a good quarterback. No more excuses. We'll see. And I think my biggest concern is for Andrew Berry is you've taken swings at wide receivers. You hit on Donovan Peoples-Jones in the 6th round. You miss on Anthony Schwartz in the 3rd round. You traded back and took Cedric Tillman in the 3rd round. He's a big, strong rookie. He doesn't fly, but he's a big, strong rookie. We'll see how he does, but he's a developmental guy. But I wonder if people are going to if they're going to look at this trade, and at the end of the season, if the Browns don't make the playoffs, I think Kevin Stefanski might be gone. Then the question is about Andrew Berry. If they look at this trade and go, this guy wasn't even the 2nd leading receiver on this team. Because Amari Cooper is probably number 1. Maybe if they're a playoff team, you could say, hey, David Njoku ended up being the 2nd leading receiver. That's perfectly fine. But if they're not a playoff team, and if it's like him, if it's Amari, Donovan Peoples-Jones, David Njoku, then Elijah Moore, and they're on the outside looking in, a lot of the fans are going to start being very upset about that, because the wide receiver position has been a sore subject here in Cleveland for quite a while. We thought we had a really good setup for a minute, and we had Jarvis Landry, and he was outstanding, but everything else has kind of been a miss. Yeah,
I mean the OBJ Jarvis combo was supposed to be it, and then Amari's. I think Amari is, like you said, a pro's pro. I've 2 guys on the Browns, by the way, in that make or break year for Trapasso in that article, Jedrick Wills as well, which says a lot. Okay,
we're gonna take that too. I couldn't believe it. I go, wow, out of 1,300 guys, we got 2 of the 8 that he wrote down.
Right. And it's like I guess this is a make or break season. Okay, we're gonna speaking of breaks, we're gonna take a quick break, and we come back. Ken is gonna tell me what the biggest weakness on what otherwise looks like a pretty good Browns roster is next. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think when I joined your show on 92.3 The Fan in the morning, and I love doing that. Anytime you want me, happy to come on.
People, I'm afraid I'm going to ask you too much.
No, you can never ask me too much.
Don't ask, Will.
No. People always, you can take.
I got to get Katie involved here. I'm sorry, I don't want to lose Katie out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, bring Katie up. Get her up at 7 a.m. and let her talk to you. Just kidding. I'm happy to do a show anytime. But preparing for it, looking at the roster, I'm like, man, Brown, I mean, this is a pretty good roster.
Yeah.
Like, what is the biggest weakness? And if you want to say it's their division or their schedule or something like that, I'm okay with it. Probably Deshaun Watson, but he's a former Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. If he plays the way he's supposed to play, the way they traded for him, then why this team should be good.
So are you guys asking me roster, or
you could be ephemeral if you want?
Yeah. What is their biggest weakness? Is it the roster? Is it the division that they're in? What would you say is their biggest weakness?
Three things.
Oh,
that's
4 things.
4 Achilles heels.
Wow. Okay.
4 things. 1, defensive tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I don't know what Jordan. I put their depth chart out just in front of me because I've been talking baseball here over the last couple of days. Actually, when you guys were asking me about Watson in 2022, I wrote down Guardians de Podesta, Watson 2022. I'm going to mention you guys' show too. Anyway, defensive tackle, they were a sieve last year because I think last year everybody was going, hey, we don't need these big defensive tackles anymore. People are throwing all over the place, and everybody decided to run last year.
Yeah.
And they were gashed. And we brought in Dalvin Tomlinson. I don't know what Jordan Elliott's going to be. That's a make or break year for him. That's another one I think people are paying attention to as Browns fans are concerned. Perry and Winfrey, can he stay out of trouble? Siaki Ika, I mean, it's a big game of Red Rover. Once he gets going downhill, it's good, but can he get going downhill? And the other position, number 2, the other one I think is linebacker. Because people have been critical of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He's coming into his 3rd year out of Notre Dame. He was great his rookie season. He got hurt early in the season, got hurt on that Thursday night game against Pittsburgh last year. And I think he was playing with an injury, ended up being on the I think he was on the IR to finish the season last year. And they lost him. They lost Sione Takitaki. They lost 2 other linebackers during that season. And Jeremiah is a more slender linebacker. We had to go off the street, go get Reggie Ragland, who's a bulkier linebacker. And so I think that he was forced to play positions that he really wasn't suited to play. He's more of a Buchanan type of dollar linebacker, if you will. So I want to see what he's able to do now with a healthy group of linebackers. I mean, Anthony Walker Jr. is going to be back. He's in fantastic shape. He's a real big leader. The other 2 questions is leadership. Who's going to be a leader? It's one thing to say that Deshaun Watson has to be the leader, but then he's suspended for the first 11 games of the season last year. You can't lead from across the street. You can't lead from your cell phone. You have to lead from inside the locker room. And I think that a lot of us, I've been in an NFL locker room, but obviously I've never put on the pads. A lot of us look to when we were in high school. Coaches inspire us. Those people inspire us because we're kids. We don't know how to inspire ourselves. In the NFL, they inspire each other. They get themselves going. And I don't know if we've ever had that type of motivation here. I think our history plays out with it. I think that these are guys who are in their 20s. And sadly, I think that the Browns' history plays out in their heads on this is what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to either start out okay and then it gets cold and things go bad later on in the season, or the season was just never meant to be. Leadership has to come from within the locker room. That's my 3rd concern. And the other one is just, again, our outlook for what it's supposed to be. We've gotten our hopes up before, and there's times where I want to jump in, and I'm a fan at times. I want to jump right in, and there's times where I'm going to hold off. Like Jim Schwartz, good, strong defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
But when people say, well, he likes to say the F word at practice, then we start getting the Greg Williams comparisons, and we start to get stuff and go, listen, Greg Williams is a good football coach. He wears out his welcome really quickly at places. And I don't need a caricature of defensive coordinator. I need a good, strong defensive coordinator to take care of his business so Kevin Stefanski can focus on the offense. I need Bubba Ventrone, who is a former Cleveland Brown and was a fan favorite as a Cleveland Brown, to do what he's supposed to do, be good at what he's supposed to do. And it's not just Cade York hitting his field goals or missing his field goals, as John Breach would tell everybody. Make sure that Kevin Stefanski can take care of his business, because I think Kevin's a very smart guy. But I'm not going to you're just not going to get rah-rah out of Kevin. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that has to happen in the locker room. So those are the 4 concerns, because it's fun to look around the league and start to say, hey, this guy would be a great coach, or that guy might be a good general manager. I don't know. You're playing in a division where people have accused Cincinnati of not wanting to move on because of finances. I'm not going to sit there and throw that grenade out there. But you have 2 other organizations that they don't move on from head coaches and general managers.
Sure don't.
And they've been very successful organizations. So while we have a lot of fun looking for coaches and things like that, it's kind of exciting to be in the news. It doesn't really work out. I want this thing to work out with these guys. I want Kevin Stefanski, and he has warts, and there's things that I disagree with him on, but I'm a radio show host. I want him to be successful. I want Andrew Berry to be successful.
We joke a lot with NC State fans. It's like, oh, coaching search time. Let's go. This is where we shine, baby. We don't shine on the field. We shine in the search. That's where we show up. But it's disastrous when you're swapping out coaches every 2 or 3 years.
It's tough. There's been time you look back on it and you go, our first choice rarely has picked us, and then our second choice has rarely worked out well. I mean, Mike Pettin was famous for being the 7th choice, and he was pretty decent. And then they drafted Johnny Manziel, and then things went awry. And then a couple of the other guys have been okay, but again, you can yell and scream at them all you want. You can try to make them run laps, which is silly. I mean, they're pros. They have to lead themselves. They have to hold themselves accountable. I can't look at it enough where I say, they got Mahomes in Kansas City. But you look in Philadelphia, that defense, those are grown men. They take nothing in that locker room, and if you give them anything in that locker room, they will deal with it as grown men. And Jalen Hurts learned under that. That made him a better quarterback. Jason Kelce suffers no fools in that locker room. And that's what's needed in this league. And that's what they had in Pittsburgh. They have it right now with Cam Hayward. That's what they had for so many years with Terrell Suggs in Baltimore. And that's what we need in Cleveland. So leadership has to come from within the locker room. It can't come from a coach's office.
All right. Well, let's talk about how they're going to do this year. Browns win total 8.5. Are the Browns getting 9 wins this season?
They're going 10-7.
Wow. All right.
They're going 10-7. Whoa, everybody's surprised.
That's fine. I said 7-10. I had somebody's going to lose some football games. My God, the over in certain places is heavily juiced. So you could see it. Like, I mean, Vegas thinks that they're winning 9+ games.
Yeah,
and the roster looks that way. So if you were independent of the juice, you would lean towards the over at 8.5.
Yes.
Well, 10-7. Of course he is.
I'm an emotional
He's not
boy.
leaning.
Yeah, me too.
So I don't know if I there's plenty. Again, when I say 10-7, people go, "How can you only pick 10 wins?"
Oh my God.
And then there will be the other half of people this summer go, "You are such a homer. How are you picking 10 wins for this team?" I go, "Look at the team with
total wins in division 2.5. We talked about a weakness for this team. Is it on the roster? Is it being in a pretty stacked division? If they're getting 10 wins, and they're certainly getting over 3 wins in the division, is that something you also believe?
2.5 is the over, right? You said?
Yeah, 2.5 is the line.
I mean, 3-3 in the division is fine with me. It's such a tough division.
Yeah.
And then the other ones, it's just they're and I got to look at their schedule right off the top. I got their depth chart here, but
they open up with Cincy at home, at Pittsburgh, Titans and Baltimore at home. So 3 or 4 at home, and then a week 5 bye, which is crazy. Pittsburgh, that Monday night game, the other 3 1:00 games. I mean, I think you got to start 2-2 probably, right? But that also means you're probably getting to that 3-3 in the division if you start 2-2.
Well, this is what I'm most afraid of, you guys. That week 5 bye
is so early, Ken.
And if they start off 1-3, hey, we could save our season right now. And Deshaun only got 6 games with Kevin. Well, all of a sudden, I got this defensive head coach. I got Alex Van Pelt. Alex Van Pelt's good. He's still here. He's good with quarterback. You start thinking crazy things. I don't want to think crazy things. It's very important to start off 2-2. It's so important to start off 500, get to that bye week, settle everybody down, self-scout, and get going with the rest of the year.
I will say, Ken, if the Browns are going 10-7, then to bet yes to make the playoffs at even money seems like a good bet. No, of course, juice to -120, but to go 10-7, I think those are pretty good odds to make the playoffs.
I'll take it, but again, you ask a 21-year-old Browns fan, I think they would agree with you. I think if you ask a 61-year-old Browns fan, I think they think I'm drunk.
They've seen some stuff.
Maybe you are. Well, I think too, like with the Browns, you have to be a little cautious too. Like Deshaun Watson's 40-1 to win MVP, but he's just not going to get the votes for MVP unless he has an otherworldly season because of this. Just that's the reality. Those are people accuse you of. They're like, you don't like the Browns, you hate Watson. I'm like, dude. It's a proprietary algorithm. I plug my stuff into. I don't know. All right,
Brinson model.
The Brinson model. That's right. All right, enough of the Brinson model. Anyway, Nick Chubb over under 1,200 yards.
Over.
Okay.
Wait. Over. Sorry, I'm a Chubb fan. Sorry.
Love Chubb.
Over.
Okay.
What else?
Amari Cooper 875.5 receiving.
No, that has to be the over.
Has to. Right?
Unless he gets hurt and Elijah Moore steps up, which knock on wood, I hope, God forbid.
If Amari is under 875 receiving yards this season, the Browns are not winning 10 games.
I'm sorry. I forget that there's a podcast too. I thought people can also see my face all the time. Yeah, you're right.
They can. Yeah.
It goes without saying.
Yes.
Well, then Deshaun Watson passing yards 3,625.5 is the line.
Just over. Because I think they will try to. And I I don't know how the season's going to go as far as the second half of the season. Like, how many teams are still going to be in it with them? Because the AFC looks a lot better, but we always think that these are a bunch of 13-win teams. They tend to cannibalize themselves, and then you hope that you're not one of the teams that are injured.
Yeah. All right. Well, it seems like the vibes are high for the Cleveland Browns with you, Ken, which we expect nothing less. Thank you so much for joining us today. Stay tuned for more all 32 with our daily drops in your podcast feed and on YouTube. And make sure you join us next time. Ken, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Ken.
The vibes are high, and so am I. Take care.
Hey.
See you, buddy.